Welcome to the Start Well podcast. I'm Dawn Thomas, your host. As a mother, financial advisor, and researcher, I know the importance of empowering young people on their financial journeys. Whether you're a parent, grandparent, or the coolest aunt or uncle, join me in exploring how impactful conversations about money can shape a young person's future. Let's harness their superpower of time and your superpower of influence to ensure they start well and continue to live well into the future. The information discussed in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal and financial objectives and situation. Before acting on any information discussed here, you should consider its appropriateness, having regard to your objectives, needs, and financial position. Welcome to another episode of the Start Well podcast. I get to welcome back our resident book reviewer, Michelle Flanagan. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Dawn. How are you?
I am doing well, and you gave me a bit of a challenge with this book. I'm actually really enjoying your book picks. You've picked StolenFocus by Johann Hari. Michelle, why this book? What made it a pick for you?
I think obviously staying focused in a lot of aspects of our lives is a huge thing, but I think probably even more so for younger generation. We all know I'm not a mum, you're a mum, but probably telling your kids to stay focused is a big thing. But I know even as an adult how easily distracted I can become. And we've got a lot of things in our lives now, like technology brings all of these other elements and fragments our life into different things. So I thought it would be good, a bit enlightening, a bit eye-opening. I'm not sure how I feel after reading the book, but interesting read.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't heard of StolenFocus, look, it's come on my radar previously because some clients have also recommended it and just saying it's really shifted their way of thinking of the world and how they're living within it. It became an important pick for the Start Well podcast because we are asking kids to learn within an environment, to take on lessons within an environment. But we have to acknowledge that they've got a number of things that are coming their way that are taking away their attention. And this book is a deep dive into why attention spans are shrinking and what the consequences are for society. So I like starting off with some of the interesting stats that these books actually give you. A study tracking students at their computers found that on average, they switch tasks every 65 seconds. When adults in an office environment were tracked, they only stay on one task for 3 minutes. Michelle, what do you make of that data?
I hope our clients are not listening, Dawn. I really do.
Yeah, look, it is. I think when you think about the emotions, it's very confronting because I know as I'm reading the book, I'm also examining what I do myself. And yes, I feel that even for me as an adult, I get distracted going between tasks, and it must be even harder for kids in terms of the world that they're in. Michelle, you've gone into this book. You've stayed focused and gone into this book.
Gone into the flow.
You've gone into the flow. Okay, could you give us a quick overview of StolenFocus?
Oh my goodness. So, StolenFocus is a book about how we as humans are distracted by technology and different forms of technology, and therefore the impact that it has on our lives and our ability to perhaps be creative, to have time to get creative and almost be bored to get down and in our creative space as well as it steals time. And so therefore, if you're stealing time, you don't get to focus on other elements in your life that are good for you. And I think as I was trying to read this book, I was also saying, I'm a financial planner. How are we overlaying this message for the Start Well podcast for young people, for parents of young people, and how are we going to grasp this into 45 minutes or whatever length this time it's going to be. So
Yeah,
it's
we
no, you go.
yeah, no, we quite often talk about starting with foundations first, and this book almost sets a new level of foundations before even the foundations that we talk about with finances. It's
Yeah.
the pre-work before the pre-work.
Yes. And I think, one of the stats I was hoping you would read and you didn't, so I'll tell it, is that a top 500 Fortune company, a CEO of a top 500 Fortune company only spends 28 minutes of their day being focused.
Wow.
28 minutes.
That's actually pretty shocking. 28 minutes.
Yes. 28 minutes. So that was a little alarming, but it also, the basis of the book is about Harry, who goes on this journey of taking 3 months out. And what it highlighted too was, my age group is we used to get up and have to pick up the phone from a landline that was connected to a cord. So, and you had to get up and change the channel on the TV. And there weren't so many channels, or there was only one form of communication coming into your household at night. And so you weren't distracted by the multiple apps that are on your phone, but also to highlighted that you can't hide from all of these things that create the distraction as well. And then it further highlights that the big companies are building these things to distract you as well.
Yes, it sounds like you're being attacked on all fronts because you've got the technology you're using, and the book does talk about your focus. If you're derailed from a task, I think they said something around 20 minutes. It takes you 20 minutes to get back and refocus into that task again, even if it's looking at an email that's come through or looking at a
Yes.
text that's come through.
Yep.
And that seems pretty harsh, right? Like you kind of think, what's what's so bad about looking at this email that's popped through? But when they're looking at the science behind it, it just seems like such a small thing is having such a big derailment to your day.
And we don't invest in that flow anymore. So therefore we don't go down the spiral. So if you are someone who, or your child is someone who loves to spend time, on the couch, in a corner, wherever, reading a book and deep diving in and just being so absorbed in that story, then you have this wonderful ability to create flow in your life, and you're nailing it, right? But if you aren't doing that, then, and you're reading a book, but then, your phone buzzes, or, you know, or it buzzes with multiple different notifications. So turn your notifications off. Most of my notifications are off. It is something that I generally done in my life because I don't like all of that extra noise. I want to be opting in versus it telling me to do that. Um, yeah, that it just shows you that there are so many variables, and the way that the big companies are designing all these variables is to suck you in and bring you into the vortex and keep you there, because it's all about big advertising dollar, and that's how they're making their money. The longer you stay, the more money they will generate through that advertising.
Yeah, and it's looking at explaining as well how our brain works with filtering. And they said, previously, so even something like noise is something that's filtered out when you're doing things. But, if you're in environments that are loud and distracting you, your brain is kind of under attack, trying to filter out a lot of different things to help you focus. And it makes this analogy of, your brain being a nightclub, and then, all these external stimuli being like the bouncer. But if the bouncer has all these different things thrown at it's almost overload, so it's not
Mm.
being able to handle the destruction. it's
Yeah.
it's kind of a good analogy to maybe share with kids. And you do have young people in your life, Michelle,
Mm.
in relation to this sense of filter overload and just overworking our brain with the focus. How do you envision having a conversation about that to young people?
I think the highlights to me are, you just got to pick the amount of time that you're going to focus on, have this distraction in your life. Like, they're not easy conversations to be having, no doubt, but like, if you're focusing, we've only got, we all know, we talk about this all the time, that time is our biggest, most valuable, one of our most valuable commodities, right? So if we spend and focus our time on this deep, dark hole, and we're getting distracted by different varying things, then we're losing time to focus on other elements.
Mm.
And so one of the things I think is that I take out of it is that if you spend a lot of time scrolling, spend a lot of time, whatever it is, on whatever app that you have in your life, and it's more about the phones, it's about, maybe it's about gaming, maybe it's about YouTube, Snapchatting, whatever it is that you're doing, that, you know, we all get that average weekly and you're like, what? And if you add that up on every day, then almost you've spent one, you know, if you're doing 4 hours across a week, then you've spent over one day just in a big black hole. Imagine what you could achieve in one day of doing something else, getting another task done, and really how much have you lost out on in the process of that. And perhaps even, you know, I'm not by anywhere means, um, you know, someone who knows a lot around mental health. But if you think about the impact of that on one's mental health or anything like that, imagine if you took half of that time and did something that was more positive towards those
Mm.
things as well. Or even did half of that time and researched into something that you're really interested in, or did something that you're really interested in, reading, art, photography, sport, you know, like the list goes on and on.
Yeah, I get you. I think, why I'm so big with my kids and sport is that they're well and truly
Of
spending
sport.
time outside without anything else. I think this book really talks about also being in the moment
Yeah.
and being able to be present. And I can't think of even how hard it must be for teachers trying to create an environment of focus and learning when kids are kind
So
of
I was talking
bombarded.
to someone yesterday and they said that they're going, and I can't remember the type of school, but their children, they've decided to send their children to a school. Shout out to Dan if he's listening to this, that that he's going to be sending his children to a school that has a focus on meditation, because it's about learning to focus. And I said,
Mm.
aha, very, very important. And then when I mentioned, you know, we were doing this podcast and reading a book, he said, ah, yes, I've read that book. So, you know, those, that schools that get back to basics, get back to play, those sort of things. And again, I'm not professing to be a teacher either and knowing what is right and wrong in education, but I think it's a reminder to have balance in your life, to make sure you're, you know, maximizing whatever it is that you want to do and not just wasting
Yeah.
time.
So, Michelle, I was very opposed to the idea of my children having to use laptops at school, but
Mm.
this was kind of forced upon us, and we were
Yeah.
told that it's the norm. That's how they're going to learn, and up to that point, very strictly was able to actually control screen time in the household. Um, and then there were counter arguments around not having device usage, right? Where people say, well, they're losing touch of the world. They're losing touch with how
Yeah.
people communicate or how people do things because you're going to need the computer. And it's a very confusing world for a parent to live in because on one hand, you're
Mm.
being told that they're going to need to be using these devices to fit in, but on the other hand,
Mm.
it feels like you are losing control of how your kids are actually living in the world. Like they can be under beautiful blue skies and things like that, but if they are fixed to a screen, they're not seeing
Yeah.
anything of that.
And I think that's where perhaps, you know, and maybe even in my household, we need to reconsider, you know, the shut off of gadgets, or it's just, where do you focus your time? And do you want it to just be lost, stolen, or do you want it to actually have purpose and meaning? And would you reframe it? And it's not saying that it's all negative. I don't think that's it either, because um, it's just, you know, it's not saying that. There are elements, like you're saying, like maybe that would pull your child back, but there are also the positives that we're missing about if you kind of can get like this book's talking about letting your children get bored for the sake of then getting creative to then explore. So, are we scrolling or are we exploring is kind of where it gets to.
Yeah, I like, yes, that concept around being bored, because I think our generation can remember, when we say that when you're younger, sometimes you even play with a stick or a rock. You didn't need a specific toy to keep you entertained. There
Yeah.
was the imagination, it was the make-believe games that you could have with your friends. You didn't need a lot to do that. And yeah, I think this book is just reminding parents as well, like for you to lean in on probably your own childhood and how you coped with that, where you had your imagination, you had your creativity, you found ways to be present in the moment. Because
Mm,
it's something probably as adults we are losing ourselves as compared. We're probably less present now than we were as kids. Um,
yeah. And
yeah.
I think it's just a good reminder that the people who you really value or the people that are really important to you are not really going to care that you're not on Snapchat or that you haven't been on it for whatever period of time. And what you're really probably missing out on is nothing really major in the world. So, um, I think it's just about realizing that the time that you lose by, what that stolen focus is something that you could be focusing elsewhere to get probably a much better reward. Be it like, the example is if you're, as a young person, your best thing is to get on, do your study, or get on and make your way in the world in terms of your career and your job and what you're going to be doing to then start making money, because we connect that back to, listening to your podcast with Glenn James. That whole, your biggest asset is your ability to get out there and make money, because then with money and surplus money, you can then get on and start investing and things like that. But what this book really highlighted to me is just the whole, are we thinking as everyday people about the impact of these things? And I know some people will be and not so much, but if we're scrolling, we're helping advertisers. We're also helping our super, because we're probably likely invested in these big tech companies. But are we, at what point do we get granular about thinking about that whole environmental social governance overlay into our everyday actions and whether or not they're right or wrong? And it's there's all the elements of what being online or what not being online, as you've highlighted with, are your kids missing out, also brings into play.
Yeah, the book, I mean, on that point that you're talking about, it talks about us losing the ability to have depth of thinking because of all the information overload, that you're only able to deal with things on a very surface level. It has this kind of bold comment that society requires us to think in depth, because problem solving requires deep thought, and it's kind of explaining that if we're losing our ability to kind of lock in and really deep dive into a
Yeah.
situation, we're also giving up our ability to do that.
Yeah, and that we're distracted. So can we then get on and have deep thought?
Mm.
Can we add value? I think the thought bubble is to think about, like, are you making money from spending time scrolling, or is someone else making that money? Or if you could be doing something else, would you then be making money? So if that is studying as a child, or going off to classes or whatever it is, or doing a part-time job, then you are going to be helping yourself, not someone else as well.
Yeah, and I think the depth of thinking, it flows onto another concept in the book around kids needing to live their own lives. I don't know how I felt about this chapter. Maybe being a slightly controlling parent, but it just said here that the book mentions that children mostly live their lives according to adult priorities. And it's about us designing their days instead of them actually understanding what they want to do. I think this concept of going out and playing, but we're afraid that, they're going to get kidnapped, or the sense of, for them to figure it out. I know definitely in my childhood, I would spend hours outside. There was no phone, no way of contacting any adults. We somehow survived, but I
We'd
don't know if
leave
I'm,
home for the day and
yeah.
we'd go off riding on our bikes and go build cubby houses somewhere. But I also realized the world is not probably as safe anymore. The world operates at a faster pace. Um, yeah, all those things I don't think help any of that.
Yeah, I think it's actually challenging our perception of it, right? I think is it really that it's not as safe, or is it our perception? I think it's the message. There's a message to parents there about needing to let go a little bit, because
Yeah.
kids have to find their own way and understand what they want out of life around, the internal motivations. And if they, between distracted and not knowing things,
And
they
how
want
will
to do
they
the right thing.
learn?
Yeah.
How will they learn that, oh, they've gone too far versus, oh, they're pushing through this boundary of perhaps fear, or let's put the more positive spin on it, they're being brave. Like, it's also that balancing act, isn't it? To say and it's okay to fail at that as well. I think that's also important. We all know when something doesn't quite go right, we generally learn something from it and get better because of that as well.
Yes. I mean, and yeah, the ability to feel is so important. Like you said, the ability to get into flow is so important. Um, that concept of flow does come in, because I believe the book does break things up in chapters as to all the different
Yes.
causes of our stolen focus. Um, are you able to take our audience through a bit deeper into the concept of flow, and maybe how they could impart flow as a family concept?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think so. Flow as a concept is about delving into the book is the easy example, delving into the book and just being absorbed by it, engrossing yourselves in those characters, imagining that scene, painting whatever that scene looks like in your own imagination. We all know when, books come to movies, we go, that's not how I imagined it. But the ability to really get into that whole storyline and just spend that time delving in and creating that your own scene, um, then brings about your imagination and your creativity. And it's no different in reading the book to have to delve into it and then think about, well, how does this apply then to perhaps investing, or how does this apply to finances, or to our audience. So in terms of that, it's just about being able to stay in something for a substantial period of time. And by substantial, it's probably talking about 1 to 3 hours. Like, when is the last time that you went out without your phone and stayed out without your phone all day long? When
Mm.
is the last time you might do it if people go and sit, go on a holiday and sit by the pool and read a book and absorb, but then do you, because you probably still picked up your phone 10 times and got distracted by it. So how much more of the book could you have got read because you picked back up the storyline? But also fast readers, like, if you're taught to speed read, how much of the story do you really take in versus someone who reads word for word? And so it's just really absorbing that and taking it in. The relation to that is like when we read the news as a newspaper, we'd sit and read the articles. And I can remember a Sunday morning would be going by newspapers and sit and read them. You don't do that anymore. You just scroll, read a headline, read a few lines, and then go, right, done, next, next, next. And so how much depth of information do you ever get out of that? How much knowledge of real situations do you achieve in that? And therefore, in your decision making, how good a decision are you really making on something as well?
Yeah, because you're giving yourself the ability to dig deep if you can, assess, and not hurry through a decision. There's a lot of things here that I think the book makes an argument why it's worth getting your focus back. And it made me think about times when I'm truly present. There are moments where I think I'm truly present, And I know that snorkeling has been a recent one because I think when you're underwater and you're trying not to die, you feel like you're very much focused on staying afloat, but you're very much there. That was that for me quite because yoga doesn't do it. I think of everything that's happening there. I can't turn it off for yoga. I find
Yeah, okay.
that you
Just
know
need more.
yeah, you know, and I think watching my kids play sport, I'm very immersed and very present in what they're doing. And then I realize that, when I'm in a deep client meeting, for example, very switched on and engaged. But I think aside from those moments as an adult, I think my attention is
So I
forced.
think back, and I even do, and we do it now every now and again, although we didn't do it when the kids were home for Easter weekend. But playing cards has always been a time, I think, in my life where, and it's what has brought me so much joy. So if I reflect on the giggling, the laughing, the camaraderie, the competitiveness of that, playing a game of
Mm.
and just sitting around, no one's got phones, no one's got, distracted, and just being present, as you say, is really where I think you're in flow.
Yes, I think
Things like
for
that.
us, maybe it's cooking as well.
Snorkeling.
I think two of us have cooking probably in common. I realized that when you're in
Yes,
the flow, so I think it maybe if you're someone listening in, it's not about redesigning your whole life because he did a quite a extreme thing of totally switching off entirely, and that may not be practical.
absolutely.
But
No.
it's more of going, what can you put into your day where there's flow, there's focus, there's being present, where
Yeah.
you can be in that and being intentional with how that could work.
And I think people who love to paint or draw or, they are people who would be in flow. Go play a musical instrument, totally in flow. Like, all of that, absolutely. You think about a big rock star on a stage and you think they are definitely in flow, aren't they? You know what I mean? Like, so, when you're on a hockey field, you would be in flow.
Yes, because you're trying, generally try not to get hit by a ball. So
Yeah.
yes, you're right. So that's like, there's a sport. People might go to the gym. I would think that it's really hard to be distracted in those moments when you're
But
needing to
some
actually do
gyms,
that.
I would say, is you can get distracted. People are still on a phone, they're
True.
listening to a podcast. Like, you can't do 2, 3 things at once. That's the thing. Something has to give in that process. Now, we would all say we're multitasking,
Mhm.
but the brain just does not have the ability. The brain's going ping, 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 ping,
Yes.
is what this book's saying. The other interesting thing in this book, Dawn, just to deviate a little bit, was the power of sleep.
Mm.
And they explained sleep. No one has ever explained sleep like this to me before. And I was like, why haven't they been explaining it this way? That when we go into a deep sleep, and I can't remember if it was REM or what the level of sleep, but the reason we need to sleep is because our brain actually washes itself of lots of toxins and it needs to go into this deep sleep so that it can get to that point of washing itself, and then that gets pushed out to your liver, and then from there you wake up with that clarity. So when you lose and you don't get enough sleep or you have a poor sleep, then that's when you feel like you could almost be like you've got a hangover, or that you're just not functioning 10 out of 10 today. And so the importance of sleep, and then that's also the importance of diet and exercise and all those things, all play into your ability to be focused as well.
Yeah, and that makes sense with how all these components come together. And I think maybe it is underestimated in terms of the power, that like the power of sleep or something like the
Yeah.
power of diet. Because I guess if you're trying to get your body to re-energize through the night reboot, you need
Mm.
to ensure that you're giving it its best chance to power up. And yeah, things like the
And also just the blue screen, like, element, like, just shutting off at the right time.
Mm,
Um, and they're not easy conversations to have with kids, are they? Like, they're but I'm not professing to be the expert on this whatsoever. Do you have a time where you know, that either the internet cuts off for your kids or that they have to put gadgets away, and do they, and the thing is these gadgets have become everything. Like I now just walk out with only my phone because it's got my credit card on it. It tells me the time. It's my phone, it's my text messages, it's got emails on it. So it's all there. I don't need anything else. I don't need to take a wallet or, the only thing I need to take is car keys if I need the car.
Yeah, I think that's what you've kind of alluded to before, is that on one hand you're being pulled into this world that is telling
Mm.
you need to operate this way, right? Yeah, why be silly and have a whole bag of things like an analog watch and
Yeah.
your physical cards when
Or
convenience
why
is
have an
all in phone.
old-fashioned alarm clock next to your bed when you could just
Yes,
have this thing?
this
Yeah.
one thing that replaces everything, but this one thing that replaces everything is the thing that is also causing a lot of harm to our focus and our body. And with the kids, my 15-year-old and my soon to be 13-year-old, no, soon, yes, no, sorry, soon to be 14-year-old, she's going to kill me that I got the age wrong, only received mobile phones in the last 6 weeks. So it
Okay.
was it was because they changed schools. They went to be further away, very sheltered in the sense that they didn't leave the
Yeah.
area, use the public transport here, but not gone any further. And so I set parental settings on there on the phone.
Mhm.
So with the phones, I can lock it out. I can also control, because I did explain to them that the phones are, you didn't have a phone before and you function. The only reason that we have the phone is because if something were to happen around pickup of them, that's what it's for. So we were clear with the boundaries of the phone. But
Yeah.
I found what is difficult, Michelle, is the laptop, because they keep on saying that they're doing homework and the distractions. Yeah, I think the parental
I'm
the par-
laughing because my stepdaughter, at school, you
yeah.
can't have your phones. And then I'd be like, "You're at school. How are you sending me a text message?" And she's like, "Hee hee, I'm on my laptop."
Yes. So the laptop, I feel, is my challenge, because even with the 15-year-old, when I put in the family controls, he said apparently my admin access had blocked something or rather, and he couldn't do something, and it was a whole big thing. And the younger two, okay, that's fine. I can lock their computers pretty easily. But what I can't do is that I feel I can't be hovering over them to make sure that they're not being distracted, because, as parents, we
And I
have a
think
lot of
that's
things
part
on.
of the education process, right? Of just they've got to learn their own self-focus,
Yes.
and it's really tricky. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of
That's why it's
argument.
tricky. It's tricky.
It's
It comes
tricky.
down to it that even though on a level you feel as a parent they should be present, they should be concentrating, I don't think parents necessarily have the time to sit there and monitor them. I think I have heard of
No.
parents where they have a computer room in the house. They don't allow the kids to use the laptop in the room
Mhm.
itself.
Mhm.
All computers are actually in one room of the house. So anyone that needs to use the laptop, even the parents, will use it
Is
there.
there? Yeah.
Yeah, some parents have they distinguish between a school device that only has school things on there versus a personal device. So,
Yeah.
but
But
again,
then
that may
that's
not
an
be
extra
practical.
cost to a family as well, right? To have
Yes,
multiple devices that can
yes,
do multiple things. And it's tricky because, we have streaming services. Most families would get a streaming service in the end with two or three users being able to access at the same time. So gone are the days where you all sat and watched the one thing and there was only two
mm,
channels to choose from and you all watched it together. Like I think
yes,
about that in terms of young kids today still watch Friends. I think they still find it funny and enjoy it. But when I watched Friends, one episode dropped a week,
yes,
and we all sat in a room at uni together and watched it together, and no one would have had a mobile phone. So we all would have been so engrossed in what was happening next with those characters, very in flow. So
yes,
they do say when you are watching, they still think watching a series that's got multiple years worth of seasons is still like being in flow because if you're invested in the characters, but it's the ability to just still, even as a family, sit and watch, a series together, but not be still having a laptop on our lap or a mobile
yes.
phone or
Second
um,
screen. They call it a second
the
screen, and
second
that's what's
screen.
That's what was frustrating for me, because apparently a lot of things that end up on the streaming devices now, they
Mm.
have to be written with a second screen concept in place, meaning they actually simplify the storyline and they repeat a lot because they feel someone's going to be on their phone. So watching Stranger Things, for example, that was our family
Mm.
series that we sat down together as a
Yes.
family to watch. I felt that the pacing was extremely slow because we were all actually locked in to it. There was no second screen to distract us.
Yeah.
And it just it felt like we were in this alternative universe of going, what is everything being slowed down now? So I think maybe that's what some of the challenges that a family might have now, is that even some of the programming is not really trying to prevent us from being
Mm.
distracted. They're trying to work with our distractions, going, oh yeah, it's okay for you to be on your phone while you're watching a series, which is
Yeah.
crazy. For me, it's a crazy concept.
And even if you think about it now, some of the streaming services, like you can have the paid version, the higher paid version, which removes the ads, right?
Yes.
And so you're having to pay for that privilege to remove ads. Otherwise, the way that that streaming service is making more money is by bringing ads into play as well.
Yeah, so there's so much to think about, and that I think there are things that parents can incorporate, and like leaning into what you already do, like you said, sitting around a table and playing Uno, and playing
Mm,
cards, and trying to find the flow in your life, and being present and making mistakes, and being outdoors. I think another thing there was that, 2003, only 10% of children in the US spend regular time outdoors, and they said that that figure has actually declined
I
in the
know.
present day. Yeah, so it's maybe things that are actionable where the family does, you know,
I think it's
divide free
about thinking
time.
about your time. It doesn't matter how old you are, is your asset. So how you then want to spend that time, you've got to I think it's teaching kids the value of time and the power of that to achieve a lot of other things in life that probably have a lot of better outcomes as well.
So Michelle,
Challenging.
if we leave when we leave this podcast now, as and we
Mm.
really appreciate everyone who's invested their time in listening to this today. Um, Are there any other concepts you want to share that we haven't covered? And also, would you recommend this book?
Um, I think it's not blatantly obvious on any financy things. I think it is blatantly obvious on how much big companies are sucking the life out of us. So if you want a wake up call as a parent, yes. It's not really giving you lots of tools though to figure out how to navigate it, like you're talking about what you do in your world. But I think it's a good conversation starter to make us as people realize just how much time we lose, and is it a therefore when we do spend time on it, is it a good use of our time. It makes me realize I should read more, read proper thing, like read books, not just read on screen, like
Yes.
read. And then I was like, oh my god, I read off my Kindle, is that bad for me? I've got to go delve and read a bit more now. It is a different type of light to a phone light. So but all those things, are they impacting me? Yeah, so is it a good book to read? Yes. It'll be hard going. It might be a book you read a couple of chapters of, put it down, come back. Like, it's hard going, that book,
Yeah.
Dawn. It's
Yes.
not, to observe it and, to just power through it. But then maybe someone's so hungry for it that they will get into flow and away they go. So, um, it was a good book. I wouldn't give it 5 out of 5, but that's, I think, because it, not that it challenged me, it just felt hard going.
Yeah,
And
because
it's
I
a
think it,
really stark, the
yeah.
reality of it is just confronting as well, I
It feels
think.
very hard work, and it feels like it's somewhat critical because you're already going into it knowing that you are a person that is distracted, and you've had your focus stolen, right? You know that at some point going into it, you're already like, oh, this sort of applies to us, and suddenly it feels a bit overwhelming because it's talking about all the things we should be doing. But I think Cara was saying she read this book as well as part of a book club, and she said that it's important to understand that the author doesn't have kids, is a writer, so doesn't have that the fact that they were able to just go off and turn off completely from the world for a few months is something that they
Absolutely.
could do, but may
Yeah.
not be practical. It's just more of what are you able to do in your world knowing this information, and just giving yourself more quality time back, like you said, quality moments.
I think even I should give myself a time limit. I think you can set a setting like that on your phone where it just would cut
Yes.
off and just you can't access the apps again. And I think that's probably actually a really positive thing because it would make you realize that, "Huh, I've spent that long," you know? Time to go do something else, read a book, watch a
Yes.
TV series, have a conversation with my kids, have a conversation with my parents, with the people that you really value, phone a friend, whatever
Yeah.
that is, go for a walk.
It's, I think, good, another good choice, Michelle. Thank you so much for coming back with the next book that we are dissecting. So Michelle doesn't run out of book ideas. She's got tons on up her sleeve. And the next one we will be reviewing is Atomic
Atomic
Habits.
habits. Yes,
So
it is.
we'll make sure that we're present in the moment as we get into that book. Um,
Yes,
and for
switch your
everyone
flow
listening,
on.
yeah, this look. Do reach out if you have any feedback from the book. Do subscribe to get all the episodes as they drop. But also, yeah, fantastic pick,
And if
Michelle.
you read it, tell us what you think.
Yep. All right. Stay safe, everyone, and take care.
Bye.
In the Spirit Reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Start Well and investing in the financial empowerment of young people. Please refer to the show notes for resources and links discussed in this episode. Subscribe now to get notified of the latest episodes as they drop weekly. And visit us on the Wealth Designers Start Well page for further resources to continue your knowledge journey.